This video will cover the solutions to your integration test that you just took in class. And so for number 1, we are integrating. And remember here, in order to do this process, we take 7x, we add 1 to the exponent. That tells us what to divide by. And let's not forget to add c. So that wasn't too bad. And number 2, now before we do anything with it, we do need to do some rewriting. And I'm going to move this -6 to the outside, and then I'll need to flip over x to the 5th. So I'm going to have -6 times the integral of x to the -5 dx. And that's going to give us -6, and we can start our integration process. So we're going to have -5 plus 1, which is -4, and then plus c. And then, yes, you can reduce the 6 and the 4, so that's going to give us 3/2. And then we have x to the -4, which means that needs to move to the denominator. So we're going to extend this fraction line and have x to the 4th, and then plus c. Okay, moving on to the next problem. Same idea here. I'm going to move the 7 to the outside. And so it's 7 times the integral of x to the 2/5, and then dx. And again, this is 7 times. And if I add 1 to 2/5, I get 7/5. And if I divide by 7/5, that's really multiplying by 5/7 plus c. And we cancel our 7, so we have 5x to the 7/5 plus c. And again, some more rewriting over here with number 4. We're going to have 8 times the integral of t to the -1/2 dt. And that's going to be 8 times t to the -1/2 plus 1 is +1/2. And if we divide by 1/2, we're really multiplying by 2. And so plus c, or you can simplify this to be 16 t to the 1/2 plus c. Okay, moving on to the next problem. Now number 5, a lot of people try to use substitution with this. And with the use substitution, you're not going to be able to account for this x on the outside. So you really should go ahead and multiply out, FOIL out 4x minus 1, and if you do, you get 16x squared minus 8x plus 1, and then distribute your x, so we have 16x cubed minus 8x squared plus x dx. Now we can go through our integration process. So we have 16x to the 4th over 4 minus 8x cubed over 3 plus x squared over 2 plus c. And you can go back and simplify this if you want to. All right, and number 6 is probably one of the most trickiest. It is the trickiest problem on the whole test, I think. Now, a couple of ways to work this one out. I would go ahead and divide this up and have this 4x squared over 2x to the 1/2 plus, and that's going to be 6x over 2x to the 1/2, and then plus 1 over 2x to the 1/2 dx. And now we can simplify our exponents, so that's in our numbers. So we're going to have 2x and 2 minus 1/2, so 3/2 plus 3x to the 1/2. And remember, it's top exponent minus bottom exponent plus, and that's going to be 1/2 x to the -1/2, because we would have to flip that over. Now we're ready to go through and do our integration process. So we're going to have 2 times, if we add 1 to 3/2, we get 5/2. And so that's times 2/5 plus 3 times, and this is going to be x to the 3 halves, so the coefficient 2/3, plus 1/2 times x to the positive 1/2 divided by a half, so times 2, plus c. And then if we simplify this, we have 4/5 x to the 5 halves plus 2x to the 3 halves plus x to the 1/2 plus c. So that one was very tricky to a lot of people. So make sure you understand where each term came from because it's a very fair question. Please ask me if you have any questions about it. Right, number 7, here we haven't looked at trig a tremendous amount, but we are just adding and subtracting each term. So we can go ahead and integrate each term. And remember we have sine, cosine, negative cosine, and we move up the chain here to integrate. So if I integrate this first part, that's going to be 8, and then if I'm integrating cosine, that's going to give me sine, so 8 sine x plus, and if I integrate sine, I get negative cosine, so let's change that plus to a minus, so I get minus 6 cosine x. And if I integrate this, remember that's the same thing as having 1/2 x squared. So I'm going to add 1 to the exponent. It tells me what to divide by. So that's going to give me 1/6, so minus 1/6 x to the 3rd. And then let's not forget our plus c. And I'm going to put it out here. Okay, moving on to the next one. And this problem also messed up some people. And again, it's really not a U substitution, it's a rewrite and FOIL out. So let's just go ahead and FOIL the square root of x minus 4 times the square root of x minus 4. So that's going to give me x. We're going to have minus 4x minus 4x, so that's going to be minus 8 root x plus 16. And that's what we're going to end up dx, and we're going to be integrating that. So we're going to end up, let's see, that's going to be x to the 2nd over 2, and let's see, minus 8 times, that's x to the 1/2, so if I add 1, that's going to be x to the 3 halves, so divide by 2/3, plus 16 plus c. And so here we can simplify this a little more if we need to. X squared over 2 minus 16 over 3 x to the 3 halves plus 16, that should be 16x, shouldn't it? Plus c. Okay, moving on. Now number 9 is a U sub problem. And so with this, we're going to let u equal 3 minus 8x. And the reason, I should back up, the reason why we end up going through here is looking at 5 is such a large exponent that we ended up having to not want to multiply that out. So we would do a u sub here. So once we have u assigned, we have to take the derivative and find du, which is negative 8dx. And some folks miss that negative. So let's see. We have the integral of u to the 5th du. But remember, du is negative 8dx. I only have 1 dx, so I need to balance that by multiplying by negative 1/8. And so let's go ahead and finish integrating. So it's going to be u to the 6th over 6 plus c. So I get negative 1 over 48. And then u was originally 3 minus 8x, all raised to the 6 plus c. Oh, I think that should be plus 6, it's plus c. All right, and moving on, number 10, going through the same process. So let's see, we're going to let u be equal to x cubed minus 1. So du is 3x squared dx. And again, we're going to go back u to the 1/2. That's the square root of u. Du, and that's going to be 3x squared dx. That's what du is equal to. We have an x squared and a dx. So we need to go through and balance this with a 1/3. And then let's go ahead and integrate u to the 1/2. If I add 1, I get 3/2, which is going to be 2/3 outside here. And then plus c. And so we end up with 2/9 times, and let's see, u, which is going to be x cubed minus 1 to the 3/2, and then plus c. Okay, and again, following the trend of u substitution, we're going to let u be 3x squared plus 4. So du is going to be 6x dx. And in our rewriting process, of course, we're going to move this 2 out. And that u in the bottom, u to the 6, we're going to move that to the top. And du is 6x dx. We only have 1x dx, so I need to divide by 6, or put a 1/6 out front. So this is going to give me 1/3, and then that's going to be u to the negative 5 over 5. And let's see, let's go ahead and finish this. So I have negative 1 over 15, and then that u to the negative 5 does need to move back down to the denominator. So I have 3x squared plus 4, and that's all raised to the 5th, and then plus c. Okay, number 12, again, kind of a tricky problem here. We are going to let u equal x squared plus 5x plus 1, and du is going to be 2x plus 5 dx. And when we went back and tried to do our u sub, of course we're going to have u to the negative 1/2, but we've got some strange stuff going on here. We've got this whole 2x plus 5 business that we haven't seen earlier, and then we've got 8x plus 20 sitting up here. But remember, if I factor out a 4, which is the GCF, I have 2x plus 5. So there's where that 2x plus 5 is really sitting. And I need just to move the 4 to the outside. So it was really there. It was just kind of in disguise. And so this is going to be 4 times u to the 1/2. So it's going to be a 2 out front. Plus c. And so I have 8 times x squared plus 5x plus 1, and that's all raised to the positive 1/2, and then plus c. Hey, last problem we had, and again, seems pretty tricky here. We've got to let u be 2 minus, and I'm going to make that say 2x to the negative 1, because I know I'm going to have to do du, and when I do that, I'm going to get 2x to the negative 2 dx. And if we rewrite this, we've got 2 times 1 over x squared dx. And so this part here is the x squared right here, 1 over x squared, but some of us forgot to see that, or somewhere we got messed up. So when we go back and actually do our u sub, we have u to the 4th du, and we have an extra 2 sitting out here, so I need to balance that with a 1/2 here. And so I have 1/2 times u to the 5th over 5 plus c, and let's see, that's going to give us 1/10 times, and u was 2 minus 2 over x. That's going to be raised to the 5th and plus c.